Have you ever bought something old, something with a history? I did once. It was a mirror, a beautiful, ornate thing I found at a dusty flea market. The frame was carved from dark wood, with intricate vines and flowers twisting around the edges. It felt special, like it held secrets. I hung it in my hallway, right across from my bedroom door. For the first few days, it was just a mirror. It reflected my tired face in the morning and my hurried figure as I left for work. But then, strange things started to happen. It began subtly. I'd catch a flicker of movement in the reflection, just at the edge of my vision. When I turned to look, nothing was there. I blamed it on tired eyes, on the play of light and shadow. Then, one night, I was walking to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed the mirror, I glanced at my reflection. But it wasn't just me. For a split second, I saw someone else standing behind me. A tall, shadowy figure with long, thin fingers. My heart leaped into my throat, and I spun around. The hallway was empty. My own breath was loud in the silence. I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light, a reflection from a window, anything but what I thought I saw. But the feeling of being watched never left me. It was a constant, cold pressure at the back of my neck. I started avoiding the hallway, taking the long way around through the living room just so I wouldn't have to pass that mirror. The nights got worse. I'd hear faint scratching sounds coming from the hallway, like nails dragging against wood. I'd lie in bed, frozen, listening. Sometimes, a soft whisper would drift from the other side of my bedroom door. It was too faint to make out the words, but the tone was chilling, a sibilant hiss that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I started sleeping with my lights on, convinced that something was out there in my home. One evening, I came home late from work, exhausted. I forgot to avoid the hallway and walked right past the mirror. I stopped, my keys still in my hand. In the reflection, my apartment looked different. The walls were peeling, the furniture was covered in dusty sheets, and the air seemed thick with decay. It was my apartment, but not. It was a dead version of it. And in the middle of the reflected room stood the figure. It was clearer this time. A woman, her face pale and gaunt, with hollow, dark eyes that stared right through me. Her dress was from another era, tattered and gray. She slowly raised a hand and pointed, not at me, but at my reflection. That's when I saw it. My own reflection wasn't mirroring my actions. While I stood there, paralyzed with fear, my reflection slowly began to smile. It was a wide, unnatural grin that stretched its face too far. It took a step forward, towards the surface of the mirror, as if it wanted to climb out. I finally broke free from my trance. I screamed, dropped my keys, and ran out of the apartment without looking back. I never went back for my things. I called the landlord the next day and told him I was moving out. I didn't explain why. How could I? How do you tell someone that your mirror is haunted, that your own reflection tried to break free? Sometimes, I still think about that mirror. I wonder who owns it now. I wonder if they ever catch a flicker of movement out of the corner of their eye, or if they ever see a smiling face looking back at them, a face that is theirs, but not. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Have you ever felt like you're being watched, even when you're completely alone in your own home? That prickling sensation on the back of your neck, the sudden chill that makes you glance over your shoulder? Most of us just brush it off. An overactive imagination, a draft from a window. But what if it's something more? What if someone, or something, is actually there? This is the story of Sarah, a young woman living in a bustling city. Her apartment was her sanctuary, a small, cozy space on the fifth floor of an old but charming building. She loved her little home, with its creaky floorboards and the comforting hum of the city outside her window. One evening, after a long day at work, Sarah came home exhausted. She kicked off her shoes, threw her keys on the counter, and flopped onto the sofa. That's when she first noticed it. A small, almost imperceptible scratch on the wooden floor near her front door. It wasn't there this morning. She frowned, thinking maybe she'd done it herself with her heel, and thought nothing more of it. A few days later, she found another one. This time, it was on the wall in her hallway, a thin, faint line in the paint. It was strange. She was careful with her apartment. She lived alone and hadn't had any guests. A sense of unease began to creep in. She started double-checking the locks before she went to bed, a habit she'd never felt the need for before. The strangeness escalated. Things would be slightly out of place. A book moved from her nightstand to the coffee table. A coffee mug she was sure she'd left in the sink, now clean and dry in the cupboard. It was subtle, so subtle that she started to question her own sanity. Was she just being forgetful? Stressed? The breaking point came one rainy Tuesday night. She was watching a movie, curled up under a blanket, when she heard a faint sound from her bedroom. A soft, rhythmic tap. Tap, tap, tap. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She muted the TV, listening intently. Silence. Maybe it was just the rain against the window pane. She tried to relax, but the silence was now more unnerving than the sound had been. Slowly, she got up and tiptoed towards her bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, just as she'd left it. She pushed it open, her hand trembling. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the city lights outside. Nothing seemed out of place. Her bed was made. Her clothes were put away. She let out a shaky breath, feeling a little foolish. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught a reflection in the mirror on her wardrobe. For a split second, she saw a figure standing behind her. Tall, impossibly thin, with long, spindly limbs. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. A trick of the light. It had to be. But then, her gaze fell to the floor. And there, etched into the wood by the foot of her bed, were 3 fresh scratches, long and deep. Deeper than the others. She backed away slowly, her eyes wide with terror, never looking away from the empty space where the figure had stood. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just backed out of the room, grabbed her keys and her phone, and walked out of the apartment, closing the door softly behind her. She never went back. She called the landlord the next day and made up an excuse about a family emergency. She left all her belongings behind. Some say she moved to a different city, trying to escape the memory. But the story doesn't end there. The next tenant who moved into that apartment, a young man named Alex, started noticing strange things too. Small scratches on the floor, objects moving on their own. He thought he was going crazy, until one day he decided to install a security camera just to prove to himself that he was imagining things. He checked the footage the next morning. It showed him sleeping peacefully in his bed. But as he watched, a closet door in the corner of the room creaked open. From the darkness within, a long, pale hand emerged, followed by a thin arm. A figure slowly unfolded itself from the impossibly small space. It moved without a sound, creeping across the room until it stood over his bed. It just stood there, for hours, watching him sleep. Just before dawn, it retreated back into the closet, pulling the door shut behind it. The urban legend is called the Watcher. It's said that it doesn't want to harm you. It just wants to live with you, to watch you. It hides in the small, forgotten spaces of your home, in the back of your closet, in the crawl space, under your bed. So next time you feel that prickling on your neck, when you feel like you're not alone, maybe you aren't. Thank you for listening, and remember to check your locks. You never know who might already be inside. The old house stood at the end of a long, forgotten lane, swallowed by ivy and shadows. I bought it for a steal, of course. The real estate agent had mumbled something about its history, but I was too focused on the low price and the beautiful, albeit dilapidated, architecture. My plan was simple. Fix it up, flip it, and make a hefty profit. The first few weeks were a dream. I replaced warped floorboards, patched up the roof, and gave the walls a fresh coat of paint. It was hard work, but satisfying. The house felt like it was breathing again. That's when I started noticing the mirrors. There were so many of them. Ornate, gold-leaf frames in the living room. A simple, round one in the hallway. A massive, full-length mirror in the master bedroom. I didn't think much of it at first. People in the old days liked mirrors. But as I worked, I started feeling like I was being watched. I'd be sanding a door frame and catch a flicker of movement in a reflection. When I'd turn, there was nothing there. Just me, the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams, and my own reflection staring back. One evening, I was cleaning the large mirror in the bedroom. It was coated in a thick layer of grime. As I wiped away the dirt, I noticed something strange. My reflection, it wasn't quite right. It was smiling, but I wasn't. A cold dread washed over me. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. The reflection was normal now, mimicking my own worried expression. I brushed it off as exhaustion. I'd been working 16-hour days, after all. My mind was playing tricks on me. But it kept happening. Little things, at first. My reflection would scratch its nose when mine was still. It would have a stray hair that I didn't. I started avoiding the mirrors, covering them with sheets. But the feeling of being watched only intensified. I started hearing whispers, faint as the rustling of leaves, just on the edge of my hearing. They seemed to come from the walls, from the floors, from everywhere at once. The breaking point came last night. I was in the kitchen making a late dinner when I heard a crash from the upstairs bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed a heavy wrench from my toolbox and crept up the stairs. The door to the master bedroom was ajar. I pushed it open slowly. The sheet I had draped over the full-length mirror was on the floor. And standing in front of the mirror wasn't my reflection. It was me. But not me. This version of me was dressed in my clothes, but they were torn and stained with something dark. Its face was pale, its eyes sunken and hollow. And it was smiling that same, awful smile from the first time. It didn't look at me. It just stared into the mirror at its own ghastly image. Then, it slowly raised a hand and pressed it against the glass. On my side of the mirror, a faint, ghostly handprint began to form on the surface, an icy condensation spreading from the palm. I didn't scream. I just backed away, slowly, quietly. I didn't grab my keys, my wallet, or anything else. I ran out of that house, and I didn't look back. The real estate agent won't answer my calls now. I've been sleeping in my car, miles away, but I can't get the image out of my head. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the rearview mirror, I see it for just a second. That other me, smiling. I think it's waiting to step out of the glass and take my place. I don't think it just wanted the house. I think it wants my life.